Well, it's time to take Brego apart. Last night, played a game where, played two games of Brego. One 1v1, one multiplayer. And what I realized is I made two mistakes. I made two serious errors in the assumptions I made in creating the deck. The first one is I tried to get blue-white to do what it's not meant to do. I've been playing a long time. I know the colors. I know their personalities. And I thought, I can make this Brego deck not that Brego deck. Not stax. Well, it just doesn't work like that. So, what happened is, in the first few turns, I got my Stonehorn Dignitary, and I had two clones in the first few turns. Glass Pool Mimic, I believe, was one, and Mirror Image was the other, with Stonehorn Dignitary. Where's Stone? I already got the deck ready for Deconstruction, Stonehorn Dignitary. I didn't get anything else interesting. I didn't get the clones that copied what my opponents have. So what I ended up doing is played Stonehorn Dignitary, took away somebody's combat phase, and then the next turn I cast Mirror Image and Glass Pool Mimic, copying the only creature I had that could really be copied, which was Stonehorn Dignitary, taking away two players' combat phases. I had Brego in play, so the next turn I poked somebody with Brego, blinked my Stonehorn Dignitary, blinked my Mirror Image, blinked my Glass Pool Mimic, and took away three people's combat phases. And I did that for about 2 or 3 turns in a row, and I was becoming quite frustrated because I wasn't drawing a clone that would copy what my opponents had. Didn't get Vesuvian Doppelganger, didn't get Clone, didn't get Sakashima of 1,000 Faces. Nobody. And even if I had, I've realized something has changed in the game. So my opponents are playing pre-constructed decks, and I have to give the pre-con decks a lot of respect now. They're far better than they used to be. They're more focused. They're tighter. They don't have as much absolute jank in them just to fill slots. And nobody really was casting any creatures that I wanted to copy. Because what happens now is everybody's creatures, especially in a pre-con, those creatures are in the deck for a reason. Those creatures are in the deck because they have synergy with that deck. So, for example, if I'd copied my my opponent's Jazzel Goldmane, well, I don't have a lot of creatures, and if I attack with a copied Jazzel, I don't have really the mana to activate him because I need to keep mana up for the tricks that Brego offers. My other opponent playing, what was he playing? Eldrazi. He wasn't really casting any, no, not Eldrazi, Tyranids. Eldrazi was a different game, sorry. So he was playing Tyranids, and there wasn't really anything that I wanted to copy because the Tyranids work well with each other. They give each other counters. One of them you attack, and another attacking creature becomes unblockable. So they all work together. And if I'm copying just one of them, I don't have that synergy. I'm not getting it. I'm only copying something. I did end up copying later in the game with the Vesuvian Doppelganger this big-ass 12/12 Tyrannid with Reach, Vigilance, and Ward 2, I believe. And that was the best thing. I did get Duplicant. I cast Duplicant on something, but it didn't matter. And I was trying not to play stax Brego, but that's what I ended up doing. So now I'm retiring Brago because it simply will not play the way I want it to play, because it won't do that. Those are not, it's not what blue and white do. Blue and white are control colors. You put them together and you have Azorius control stacks. So in the first game, 1v1, I lost because I couldn't get enough traction early enough. The second game, the bigger multiplayer game with 4 people, 4 lads were in on it. And I put these up. You can watch those games on my channel if you want. Typical pub night videos. And I don't want it to be stacks, but that's what it is. And because I made it this tribal clones thing that's reactive, it's not proactive. A lot of times I'm just sitting around waiting for my opponents to do something interesting so I can respond to it, so I can copy their creature, so I can do some kind of trick. And in the commander game, I really don't want to be sitting around waiting to do some trick, because it feels like I'm not really in the game. In a 1v1 modern vintage, a more direct format, that's fine, because that works and it feels okay. But in a commander game, the turns take so long that if I'm not doing anything, if I'm not really in the game because I'm being reactive and I'm just waiting to respond, it just doesn't feel good. So what happens when somebody takes apart a deck? Well, first, obviously, you need to de-sleeve it and then go through the deck and figure out what are you going to keep, what are you going to try to sell, buy list, trade away, in order to obtain cards for a deck that plays the way you want. The thing is, though, most commander decks, they really don't. So looking on Moxfield has this neat little feature where it automatically gives you a value for the cards and a comprehensive value for the deck. Brego, according to Moxfield, is worth about $800 US, the way I have it listed. I don't have the foils listed properly because the Moxfield, the way that they do the foil overlay, I don't like the way it looks. I understand why they have to do it, because they have to have something that visually indicates that you have a foil, but I don't really like it. So on my Moxfield decks, you'll see almost everything is non-foil, which is not true in paper. Edgar is a great example of this. You look at my Edgar deck list on Moxfield and you'll see pretty much everything is non-foil. You look at my paper Edgar deck, you see pretty much everything is foil. The exceptions are things like Mercurial Pretender, this pre-release version. It was only in foil, so that's listed as foil. But anyway, like I was saying, most of these cards have that value. So on paper, on Moxfield, the consolidated price is about $800 US. It's only in a couple cards, though. Most of these cards are relatively worthless. Okay, Sakashima of 1,000 Faces, he's worth about 30 euros. But in Sakashima Student, he's worth something. Spark Double, I don't think that's worth, especially non-foil, I don't think it's worth anything. Foil is probably about 5. So is it worth my time to try to sell or trade a bunch of these smaller cards? And then I have to think, okay, which of these cards am I going to use for another deck? Not a Brego rebuild, I'm not going to return to that idea. I've tried Brego twice now. I did Stax Brego, and I didn't like it because it was so oppressive. I felt bad playing it, as much as my opponents felt bad for me playing it. And this Tribal Clones Brego idea that I got a hold of, I didn't feel bad for my opponents playing it, except when I took away everybody's combat steps for a few turns in a row. I felt kind of dirty doing that, but that's the game state. Those are my options. That's what the deck gave me. That's what it was doing. And that's probably what it's going to keep doing. Karmic Guide, Secret Lair. It's worth a little bit, and I love the art. It's just beautiful. So a lot of these cards I'll be keeping simply because they're not worth my time and selling them off. Nobody's going to, even if I sold it as a block, nobody's going to give me that 800 for the whole deck. Nobody wants the whole deck. Stoneheart Dignitary. He's not worth anything, even in foil. And that's kind of interesting, isn't it? You have cards that are great in a certain deck, but they're glue cards that have no great financial value. They make your deck work, but that's it. And then you have to figure out what to do with them. Supreme Verdict. So probably keep that because I don't think I have many other copies, for example. Tezzeret the Seeker. This is probably my 4th or 5th copy of Tezzeret. I love Tezzeret. Pretty much all my blue decks have one. So I'll be keeping Tezzeret. And then there's cards like this. So Copy Artifact. It's worth about 40, 50 euro in this condition. It's EX. It's excellent. But if I sell it, it's my only copy. It's probably going to be a while before I can get another one, because it's reserve list. It's not going to be reprinted, and the prices have started to creep up on reserve list cards. Disallow. Even if this was a 10 euro card, it's going to be reprinted at some point. So the question is, do I keep it now? Do I keep it for other decks? Do I have any decks that need it? Or do I sell it with the expectation that I would buy it back at some future reprint? Reality Acid. This doesn't have much financial value. It's only good in Brego. I wouldn't put it in any other deck because the Vanishing 3 really doesn't excite me. And that's why it doesn't have much value, because it's only a good card in one specific deck. It's not a good card in most other decks. What happens? So you enchant a permanent, and the owner of that permanent, the person controlling it, they've got a few turns to figure out what to do. They've got a few turns to either kill that creature, destroy that land, destroy that artifact or enchantment, or simply destroy the Reality Acid. So it's probably not going to go off. Treachery. So this is a big chunk of Brego's value, financial value, and I'm not really incentivized to sell it off, to trade it, because I only have 2 copies and it's reserve list. I don't know where I would put Treachery, because the real utility in it is the ability to blink it, to continually get it back into play, to untap those lands, taking the creature. The other copy is in Rafik Enchantments. So Rafik is an Enchantress Voltron deck. And my second copy of Treachery is in that because it works so well. It's an enchantment. I've got ways to get enchantments back. Ghostway. This card has a little bit of value, but it also has limited utility. So even just because a card has some value, how easy is it going to be to sell? If I put out a Magic Card Market, who's going to want it? What kind of deck is somebody building that they're going to want Ghostway? Pretty much Brego, something like that. If I buy list it to my local game shop, I'm not going to get much of anything out of it because they know better than I do that nobody's really using it. So let me just unsleeve the last cards and then I'll show some thoughts of kind of what's going to happen to the discombobulated pieces of Brego. Alright, so here we go. Tithe. Tithe is either going to go into Icarus Siddiqui or it's going to go into Aurelia. Probably Aurelia because Icarus Siddiqui I put in Gift of Estates, and Gift of Estates is pretty good in that deck because I can find 3 planes if somebody has more lands than I do. I can only do it at sorcery speed, whereas Tithe of course is an instant. But Icarus Siddiqui has 4 lands with multiple land type planes. So the Triome, the Shockland, Temple Garden, Mistful Plains, and then the Checkland. The one name escapes me, of course. So many cards, I can't remember them all. So Tithe will probably go into Aurelia. Teferi's Protection. Now this is opened up for Icarus Siddiqui in my last video talking about her and Sidar Kondo, her buddy. I wanted to put in Teferi's Protection, but I didn't have an extra copy, so I used Heroic Intervention instead. Heroic Intervention doesn't protect me though, and it became apparent in last night's final game, which I didn't get on camera. With Icarus Siddiqui, I really want a way to protect myself, not just my creatures. So this will go into place of Heroic Intervention. Swords of Plowshares, that's just going to go into Aurelia. Return to Dust, don't have anything for it. Momentary Blink, Ghostway, all these specific Brego cards. Exile creatures and return to the battlefield. I don't have a place for them. I either have to decide to keep them for the art, keep them for some future non-Brego deck, or sell them off. This, no value. It's pretty. It looks good, but it doesn't cost anything. Treachery. I'll be keeping that simply because it's reserve list and it's quite useful. It's a nice card. Rhystic Study. I have 3 copies of Rhystic Study. I have this Commander's Arsenal, I have an original non-foil, and I have a Judge foil. I want to get one of the anime ones, but it's pretty expensive. So to get it, if I wanted to essentially trade one of my Rhystic Studies for that, it either has to be the Commander's Arsenal foil, which is only about €50, or the Judge foil. Given that the Judge foil has unique art, and I don't think they're going to, I don't expect them to print that again. I don't think they've printed it again. I would have to sell this one, which is my only foil of this Therese Nielsen, so something to consider. Real Acid, I already talked about that. Mirror Maid. It looks really useful. It looks like I could use it in more decks, but I don't know. I'll see what the value is if I want to trade it in. Ghostly Flicker, Disallow, of course, goes in multiple decks, protects my graveyard. Copy Artifact. Talked about that. So I've taken apart Brego, and there's only 10 cards, so about 10 cards make up the lion's share of the financial value. Everything else is just essentially junk, essentially worthless. So that's kind of my thoughts on it. Again, I have to say that the Precon decks, I'm sure she has some kind of value. Recruit of the Guard. Maybe I'll sell her because I don't have a place for her right now, and she's reprintable. I'll have to look that up. So it didn't work. Didn't work the way I wanted. It worked. Let me be clear. Brego worked, but it just did the Brego thing. Definitely keeping Vesuv Doppelganger. I love Quentin Hoover's art. This is my first favorite card ever. It's just, I really like looking at it. It makes me happy to look at it. So this will be going in my art binder. I don't really have another place for it. Or maybe NMR. Why not? But I definitely don't want to build another deck that has too many clones, because my clones will not have the synergy with the deck, the reason that it's in my opponent's deck. My clones will only be singleton, and if people are not copying or playing things that are an immediate huge threat, I will fall back on just doing bullshit, like taking away everybody's combat step, excuse me, until eventually, slowly, I can poke away people with an unblockable Brego. That part worked very well. This is not what I want to do. Not what I want to do at all. Her, she's an all-star. I'm going to miss playing her. It's always funny to me, although it makes him feel bad now to play her, detain everybody's non-land permanents 4 or less, and blink her. So I shut off mana rocks, I shut off small creatures. She shuts down a lot of things. She's the epitome of Azorius, and that's what these colors want to do. They want to control the game. If I want to play a control deck, I'm sure this has some value, but I don't have another copy of it. I don't know if they'll reprint it with that art, so I'll probably end up keeping it. This surprises me. The Judge Foil Sword of Fire, Sword of Fire and Ice, is about 3 times the value of this Light and Shadow. Sword of Light and Shadow just doesn't have any real financial value commensurate to its rarity, commensurate to its utility, I think. In Commander, I think this is fantastic. If nothing else, for the Raise Dead. The protection from black and white, that's fantastic. But being able to raise dead by just connecting, smashing people, that's pretty good. Mana Vault. This is a big chunk of the deck's value. But I like having the duality of both these mana rocks being revised. So I would either sell them as a pair or keep them, and since I'm kind of running out of revised Soul Rings, I don't have as many as I used to. I probably won't. I bought this specifically for Brego. I paid about 20 euros for this. I paid a lot to get one in near mint condition. I have no other deck where I really would want this. I'd rather play Star Compass in most decks, and the Star Compass comes into play tapped, and it provides a mana of any color that a basic land you control can produce. So it's reliable. It's going to give me at least one of my colors if I'm playing a multicolored deck. Fellwar Stone, it's a toss-up. If I throw this into, say, Aurelia, who's red-white, and nobody's playing red-white, if I'm playing a bunch of green-black, blue decks, it doesn't give me anything. Okay, so I can tap it for colorless. Fantastic, that sounds like a winner. Not worth anything. Arcane Signet, maybe I'll put this into Ikrisidiki. Basic lands, beautiful, love the art. But they'll just go in my, I have a box of where I keep all my basic lands by land type and then by set. So I'll put those back. Maybe I'll build a Ravnica or some deck where this art fits. I like my basic lands, the art, to in some way fit the deck. Sometimes I really have to strain, sometimes I really have to reach for it. Carador was easy. Carador is Tribal Spirits, Carador, the copy I have in command, has been altered to be wearing samurai armor, to be carrying a naginata, and my friend that did the art changed the set symbol to a toregate. So he's got Kamigawa basic lands, because most of the spirits that he has are likewise from Kamigawa. Vesuva, I mean, no value there. Winding Canyons, reserve list, but one of those low tier reserve list cards that nobody ever plays, no value. There's a little bit of chunk of value of the deck. Thawing Glaciers. Shrine Generator. In foil, this is expensive. In foil, this is about 30 or, well, comparatively expensive. But I love it. I like putting it in decks that have problems getting their lands into play. This will go into Aurelia. I'm not selling this. This will go into Aurelia, so I have more ways of getting my basic lands out of my hand into play. It's an expensive way to play 2 lands a turn, but it's reliable. It's effective. And that's it. That's there's 10% of the entire deck's value. So that $800 figure I cited, well, there's $80 of it. And I say dollars when I'm talking about that because that's the currency that Moxfield links to. When I talk about things locally, I either use euros or Czech crowns because those are the currencies that we use here in Europe. Czech crowns, of course, in Česká republika. Euro outside in the Eurozone. I'm going to sell this. I like it. It's pretty. It took me a little while to really appreciate how it looks. But I don't have another deck for it. I don't have another deck that needs a Flooded Strand. And even if I did, let's say it's Rafika the Many. Well, he needs 3 fetch lands. He has his 3 fetch lands. So if I put this Flooded Strand in there to replace the Onslaught Flooded Strand that he has now, just the way I am, I would want to get a foil Windswept Heath from this set, and I would want to get a foil Misty Rainforest from this set. that's going to be expensive. Maybe I will do that, but I probably won't. I'll probably end up selling this and using money to buy Aurelia's Secret Lair, Niktos Shrine to Nyx. Every time I see this, I always think they need to finish the cycle. They need to print the enemy-colored Mirage fetch lands. Emeria, maybe I'll sell this, maybe I won't. It's only goes in decks with a lot of planes. But that's it. That's Brego. That's why he doesn't work the way I wanted to. To be fair, I'm not really sure what I expected. I expected to be able to copy interesting creatures, big things, 7/7s with double strike, 10/10s with trample, copy that sort of thing. But most of them, the reason they have trample is because of the other cards that that player has, because of the counters on them, because they have synergy with that deck. They don't have synergy in my deck. So unless I spend all my clones on copying that person's deck to get the synergy, it falls flat. It's disappointing. So I return to stax. Alright, nobody gets a combat step until I feel like giving you a combat step. And at one point, when I quit doing it, I had Set's Tiger in my hand, and I told the one guy with the big board presence, if you attack me, you're not getting through. And he looked at my untapped mana, he looked at my creatures, he looked at my Ability Displacer, and he said, okay, and he smashed the other guy. So I was still playing stacks. I was still playing a control game, which isn't what I want. If I want to play control, I'll play Azami. Azami does control very well. And I know going into it, I'm going to do it. And that's it. It's kind of sad in a way, but You did good work, Brego. Rest in peace.